I'm Zach Irwin, Regional Livestock Specialist with the University of Missouri Extension, and this is your Extension update for the week of July the 16th. And so I'm getting a lot of phone calls right now, a lot of guys seeking for alternatives and looking for some answers as far as feed shortages. And when you look at alternatives for what we have, corn silage becomes fairly cheap when we're talking about chopping corn versus 80 or 100 plus dollar a bale hay. The problem is when we don't have a lot of rain and it was fertilized heavy with nitrogen, we can have a lot of nitrate issues. And so that's what we're talking about a little bit today, is the need to test for the nitrates in your corn. And it's not just corn, it's your sorghums, your sorghum sedans, your millets, anything that you fertilized heavy with nitrates and might have an accumulation, because they can become very poisonous and deadly. When you run them through a ruminant animal, your nitrates become nitrites. They bind your hemoglobin in your blood, and you're basically going to suffocate your animals if fed too much feed with high nitrate levels. So as far as cutting it off here, when you walk up to a field of corn, if you're going to chop it, it's going to leave about the bottom 6 or 8 inches. So really you just need to take your knife out and get down here and take it off at about 6 inches. You want to go ahead and leave the stubble, and this will be the part of the stalk that we're going to test. So you'll see here I have split the corn stalk vertically, and now I'm going to drop my acid on there and see if we have any nitrates within the plant. And so you'll see where we have dropped the acid. It's turned a pretty dark blue pretty fast, which means there are quite a bit of an accumulation of nitrates within that plant. And so I would suggest before we green chop that, we're probably going to take a sample and send it off to the lab and get a good quantitative test. One of the things to keep in mind as we're talking about green chop, if we're going to do it, and it needs to be fed that day. You have got to green chop and feed daily, because nitrate accumulations will change overnight. They'll intensify. And if you green chop of an evening and feed that morning, your level of nitrates will rise significantly overnight, and you can run into some real problems. So a couple things to keep in mind. If we would happen to get a rain, and I know there's some in the forecast now, a rain doesn't just dissipate it overnight. A lot of times it takes 3 or 4 days for those nitrates to go ahead and make more leaf area and clear the plant, so that they're not nearly as toxic. Another thing to keep in mind is you pick your samples to test. Pick a representative sample of the field. And so if you've got drought-stressed plants, ones that leaves are rolling pretty bad, firing at the bottom, you want to grab some of those. You also want to grab some of your plants that aren't so bad, that maybe have accumulated a little more water over time and aren't going to be as bad in nitrates. Most extension offices will have test kits. I would encourage you to call up there and check prior to, because if they don't, they'll call around and we'll find somebody to meet you and get you taken care of. And so this has been your extension update for this week. I hope you found the information useful, and I'll talk to you next week.